Hello again, it's Yvonne here. We've been going through a bit of a tough time lately, and I wanted to deal with something that we all need to know more about: the anxious child. A lot of us are seeing symptoms in our children, and I'd like to talk about those. There's a very big difference between an anxious child and a child that really is just living through the childhood anxieties. An anxious child, what we define within therapeutic terms, is when the anxiety gets in the way of everyday life. When that child can no longer do what we expect a child to be able to do, like play away from their parents, then we think that this child needs to be helped and have interventions to help the anxiety. There's a lovely quote from Russell Barkley that says, "People who need love the most will ask for it in the most unloving ways." And that's probably what you're seeing in your children. Their behavior is really testing you, but really what they're doing is asking you for help. Let's have a look at the different types of anxiety. These are not for the purpose of diagnosis. I'm taking you through the ways that you might recognize this in your child, but not for the purpose of diagnosis. You will need to take them for further evaluation if you want intervention done. The first one is separation anxiety. Now, between the ages of 3 and 4, we do expect to see separation anxiety. Children don't want to be away from mom or dad or a caregiver that they're used to. They don't have that confidence and independence yet. After the age of 4, if we start seeing children who refuse to be away from their parents, who really have a meltdown when they are left away from a parent, that's when we need to start being concerned. If they're at home and they're in a safe space, mom and dad are there, but they don't want to sleep alone, to a certain extent, again, behavior is normal. But when it becomes a problem that they can't live their daily lives, we need to have a look at why that's happening. Refusing to go to school. This is not a huge issue while schools are closed, but when schools are open, children should be able to merge back into the school routine. A couple of days here or there where they don't want to be separated, but after about 4 or 5 days, they should be happy because they've realized how much fun they have at school and they feel safe with the caregivers there. So separation anxiety is something that should pass or at least minimize to a certain extent. Generalized anxiety. This is when your children just seem to always be worried about everything. When they take on those adult worries and they think about things that they really don't need to think about as children. This causes immense distress in children. You'll start seeing children who stop eating, they stop concentrating, those fidgety children. You know, as adults, when we can't pay the bills, for example, it's very difficult to sit in a meeting and focus on what we're talking about if you can't meet your commitments, if you can't pay your bills. You tend to get a bit fidgety because your mind is somewhere else. Children are no different. They constantly worry or have negative comments. These negative comments give us clues. We need to listen to these children and we need to work through them. We need to acknowledge it but work through it. Again, clingy children. This comes with the separation anxiety. A little bit is normal, but when it starts becoming excessive and affecting the way they live their lives, we need to start addressing it. Always crying. Children who always cry. We've gone through the basic needs of a child. If we've met the need for food, security, and all those things, but they're still crying, then there's a much bigger need that needs to be addressed by the parents or the caregiver. We need to look deeper into that and we need to find out how to help. Tummy aches and feeling unwell. This is a terrible one because as parents, how do we know when it's an illness and how do we know when it's anxiety? It's such a tough line. When you start seeing a pattern, so perhaps every Sunday night, your child has tummy aches because they're anxious about going to school. See if there's a pattern associated to it. But when it comes to health, it's always better to assume that your child needs the intervention medically rather than assuming that it's anxiety. We can always deal with both simultaneously, but we shouldn't ignore the medical needs that our children have. Specific phobias. Children are scared of certain things. We all have different fears. But again, this goes to where it starts affecting the way they conduct their lives. If they refuse to climb into a bath, even though it's something that they've done as a baby or a toddler, that's a cause for concern. If they've conducted their life normally, but suddenly they're overly anxious during a thunderstorm, that's something different. Something's changed. So, although fears are fairly normal, we're talking about phobias that have developed recently or something that they have developed despite having a normal reaction to it before. Those phobias really do give us clues about how safe or unsafe they feel. So, it's worth looking into those. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Please remember this is not for diagnosis purposes. I'm mentioning this because it's a commonly used word and you will understand what I mean by this. This is when our children have repetitive behaviors, when they do something to an unhealthy extent. So if you wash your hands to the point where your skin starts going raw, yes, we need to wash our hands. There's an epidemic out there, but we need to find a balance where it becomes obsessive and where it is productive. Once you cross that line, we're dealing with anxiety that needs to be looked at. Panic attacks. These don't happen very often in younger children, but as our children get into the teen years, they start displaying more of the behavior that we can understand as adults. Panic attacks are the ultimate for someone who's anxious. It's when you feel like you have something heavy on your chest, you have shortness of breath, possibly even dizziness. It all stems from a loss of control. How do I know what's going to happen? How will I deal with that? What if I'm not equipped? What if I have forgotten something and therefore I'm not equipped? It's an unrealistic fear that hinders the way that you live your life. Panic attacks are the end of the line for teenagers before they really do they're seeking your help in an unproductive way. So they're asking for help without knowing it. We need to listen to these very, very carefully. Selective mutism. This is a tough one because a lot of parents think my child is just shy. When visitors come over, my child is just a shy child. But these are the children that are choosing not to talk when other people are around because they don't feel safe with those people. If they refuse to talk with close family members around, this should be a safe space. They should feel comfortable to voice themselves or to offer an opinion. If they are not, it is hindering the way that they live their lives. If children become anxious before they go to school or they're uncomfortable around people from school and they choose not to speak. So if you send them for a therapy session and they are not speaking, this is a huge cause for concern, and it really is just the way that your child has chosen to deal with their anxiety, but we need to help them through this. How do we help them? First of all, talk to your child about what is concerning them. If they aren't able to identify it, you need to simplify the question. The question cannot be, what's bothering you? We need to ask, when are you scared? Why does that scare you? Is it the sound? Is it the smell? Is it because you don't know what's happening? So you as an adult need to dig a little bit deeper into that situation and figure it out for the child. Why are they feeling anxious and what is it that makes them feel anxious? Then you need to acknowledge that anxiety. We cannot tell children that what they're feeling is silly. That doesn't solve the problem for them. We need to acknowledge that they are anxious, they are feeling scared, and then come up with a solution. Find ways for them to cope with that situation. The way that you and I would cope with a thunderstorm is very different to the way that your child might deal with that. So you need to find something that works for them, not for you, for them. They can make suggestions, but you may have to guide them on really exploring what will make them feel safe. Maybe it's making a tent when there's a thunderstorm so that they feel more secure. Being in the tent with a specific parent or being with a big sister or a big brother. They need to explore what satisfies that need for them. The small changes you make at home make a big difference to your child. So if you have small changes you can make, like moving the bed away from a window, or on the nights that there's a thunderstorm, having the mattress in your bedroom. Just as an exception, it's not the rule, but this helps your child cope. You're acknowledging the feeling and you're helping them find a solution. If you build healthy routines at home, you'll find that your child feels more secure. I know when it's breakfast. I know when we leave for school. I know when daddy goes to work or mommy goes to work. Those routines offer security. As adults, it offers us security, and it does the same for our children. So try to keep those routines as regular as possible. There will be exceptions, but those should be exceptions. If you cannot find or are not able to talk to your child about this and get to a solution, find a professional who can help you. There are many ways to tackle this, and there are many people who can help. But acknowledge, and we acknowledge your fear that you can't help your child, and we are willing to step forward. Contact someone to help your children. Good luck with your anxiety and your separation from your children, or being locked in a house with your children while we go through lockdown.